We are comparing the freezing point depression difference in copper 2 sulfate and copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate. So we know that the freezing point depression equation is the constant times the molality times the Van't Hoff factor. If we look at both the copper 2 sulfate and the copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate, we can see that they both dissociate into two ions when they're put into water. So the Van't Hoff factor is going to be the same, so we can technically ignore that because it's not contributing to anything because it's the same when we're comparing them. The molality we can calculate. Molality is total moles of solute over kilogram of solvent. So if we say that we have 1 kilogram of solvent, and we can add up the molar mass of the copper 2 sulfate, which is 159.565 grams. So that gives us 0.00626 moles over a kilogram of solvent. And then we can do that same thing for the copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate. 1 gram, if we theoretically take 1 gram of it and we divide it by the molar mass, or the grams, which for copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate is 249.565 grams, we get 0.004000692 moles. And we can find the molality of that one also by doing the moles over 1 kilogram, which is also just theoretical. If we just put it in 1 if we put each of them in 1 kilogram, then we get this many moles per kilogram. We learned in class that adding impurities to a solvent will increase the boiling point and decrease the freezing point, or I guess you could say increase the freezing point depression. So if we put 1 mole of copper 2 sulfate in a liter of solvent, that would be 159 grams of copper 2 sulfate in here. And we do the same thing over here. We have a mole of copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate in 1 liter, which is 1 kilogram. Then that's 249 grams of copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate. So if you think about the pentahydrate, it's connected to this, and so it's connected to the copper 2 sulfate. So when you put it in the water, there is going to be slightly more water, but this concentration is so much higher than the copper 2 sulfate by itself that we can see that there are going to be more impurities in the copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate because there's more stuff per mole. We've got 249 grams versus the 159 grams of copper 2 sulfate by itself in the water. So we can see that the copper 2 sulfate pentahydrate will have a higher boiling point and lower freezing point, so an increased freezing point depression than the copper 2 sulfate by itself.